Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, to create value, and to build what's next. I'm Preston Chandler. I'm here with my co-host JL Heather, and together we lead Centered. It's a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity to spark creativity and unlock that full potential of their teams through innovation coaching and strategy. Today's guest built a career on commanding attention in places where I think it's kind of hardest to earn that attention. Things like trade show floors and Zoom calls and distracted corporate environments. I'm thrilled to welcome Anders Boulanger. Boulanger. Okay. Magician turned entrepreneur. I even practiced that beforehand, Anders. Horrible. He's a magician turned entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Engageify. And he's helped a bunch of companies like Microsoft, Fortinet, and Siemens turn some of their everyday interactions into moments of connections that actually move the needle. Anders is also the author of a book called Engage First, Capture Attention. He's got it right there. Capture Attention, Build Trust, and Drive Real Results, where he breaks down the playbook he developed after performing live around the world for nearly 2 decades. I think we might have to ask a question about that. Jail and I are not magicians, so that might be interesting. So, Anders, again, welcome to Breakthrough Innovation. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you very much, Preston and JL. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So maybe we didn't actually talk about this question beforehand, but now that we've touched on magician, why did you shift from magician to having a company?
Well, I mean, once a magician, always a magician. So I wouldn't say I shifted away from it. I think it's more of and by the way, I got started when I was like 5 years old. I got a Fisher-Price magic set, and I got more and more, gifts and books, and then paid my way through university, got a physics degree, and but I never used it, right? So it was kind of, I've always done magic. So and so when you say shift away, I'm like, no, I didn't shift away. I like to think that what I did with my company Engageify and what we do with at trade shows is it's like a higher and better use of my skill set, right? So it's the idea that entertainers and not just magicians, but entertainers, create engaging presentations, right? That people want to watch that. Entertainment has a certain, ingredients to it. And what I found was that those ingredients could help communicate information in a way that is, first of all, gets noticed, captures attention, and then is actually remembered, which is lacking a lot in, corporate America. Is just, there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of dry material. There's a lot of things that people want to get across, and yet it's kind of falls on deaf ears and blind eyes, if you will, because no one's paying attention. So that's kind of where the company Engageify kind of birthed out of. Yeah.
I mean, that makes me think of one of JL and my favorite TED Talks, which is Death by PowerPoint. So if you've never gone and looked at it, it's a good one. But I think it gets to a lot of those points of we're trying to convey information and not actually have engagement. And that's part of it.
And I mean, not to plug my book again, because you just did, I appreciate it, but Engage First, like the mentality on that is it, and in the cover, and people just listening, I'll just describe it, but in the background, you can see persuade, sell, communicate, lead, connect, all of these things, but Engage First is first because you can't do any of that. It's like without first getting everyone's attention, right? Like, friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears, right? Like, it's like, you cannot make that, monumental speech in a Shakespearean, play without getting people's attention. So that's really what it's about, is we need to, and part of the problem, if I can go into this, guys, is that we have technology that makes it so sometimes we don't have to engage, right? Like we don't make the phone calls, we do texts, we do emails, we do things that kind of push us back a little bit from those personal interactions. There's automated tellers, there's, self-checkout. There's all these places where we don't practice these skills as much. And on the other side of it, generationally, we have people coming up that are on their phones first, right? Are kind of like, that's not the way that they're used to engaging. So there's this kind of like skill set that, we're not learning inherently. And so we talk about these engagement skills that are critical in business, and what's old is new again. Like it's like AI knowledge is cheap now, right? But how
Absolutely.
we convey that knowledge, that's where the power is. So it's kind of like this leaning into our humanness, right? To recover these skills. So that's, really what I write about in the book, and just, just what we're really passionate about. So AI, I'm not against AI, but in our website, engageify.ai, it's about authentic interactions, right? It's a different AI that we need to remember.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of our favorite quotes, George Bernard Shaw. The worst part about communication is the illusion that it's taken place. Uh,
Yeah.
I think people just underestimate their ability to communicate, or I should say, overestimate their ability to communicate, and don't really understand all the complexity that kind of comes along with it.
Mm.
And you have to walk this fine line of engaging enough, but not overdoing it and kind of going into that gimmicky
Yeah.
area. So like, how
Yeah.
do you help people maintain that balance?
So one of the things we talk about is this like line, like picture a line out in front of you, and off to one side, to the right of you, let's say, is annoying, like that gimmicky, over the top, right?
Yeah.
And out to the left in front of you on this line is boring. So we call this the boring to annoying, line, right?
Spectrum.
And everyone wants to be in that sweet spot that is that balance, right? That we don't want to be boring, but we don't want to be over the top. And what we find, and we do this in some of our coaching and presentation trainings and everything, is that people are so afraid of being over the top that they end up being on the boring side. We underestimate. You were talking about overestimating our ability to communicate, that we overestimate our ability to annoy is really what happens. And so what we'll do is we'll assign like a kind of like an avatar or kind of like an idea, right? And I'll say, if someone's very monotone, I'll give them this challenge of like, okay, I want you to do that 2-minute presentation again, but I want you to do it like you're a kindergarten teacher. And so now they have to be like, okay, boys and girls, here now we're going to be, and the modulation is massive, right? Because we're trying to keep the attention of small little children, right? And so what ends up happening though is when you ask the rest of the people who are watching this, you go, what did you think of that? Was that over the top? And they'll say, no, it was perfect. And the person who thinks they were going over the top are going, what? Like, I'm actually better that way? They're like, yeah, it was like a lot more interesting. And so that line is that we were falling on the boring side. So it's pushing yourself a little bit further and knowing you're more capable of delivering things that maybe you didn't think you were, right? There's more to you than you know, is what we find with that exercise.
I love it.
That reminds me of my experience, like in high school and college, because I did theater and musicals and stuff. And I remember them telling us that we have to make our motions so much bigger than what we thought. So we thought that we were communicating and my hands are here and nobody can actually see that. And so I had to get to the point where I felt it was ridiculous. But to your point, the audience felt like, oh, you're finally communicating.
Yeah. It also reminds me a little bit, I don't know if you ever got those photos at school and they'd make you do some pose that's uncomfortable, but it looks good. It's similar to that too, in a sense, right? Yeah.
That's funny. So I'm gathering here that you take engagement seriously. It's not just fluff for you. It's actual business strategy. So what does this look like in a real world business setting?
Well, I think there's a number of applications. So, I mean, obviously, we've already kind of touched on this idea that communication, it's not as easy as we think it is. So we often focus at Engageify on these customer interactions because I say sometimes, like if you're talking about a team meeting, internal Teams meeting or Zoom meeting or whatever, you're like, I don't care how you show up. Like if that's how you want to show up to your own people, like that does matter. But what matters even more is how you show up in front of the customer, right? So we did a lot of training of salespeople, of systems engineers. We were also talking about this idea that, it doesn't matter what you know. Some of these engineers, they're very, very smart. And if they just go, hey, I just told you, I communicated, that's not quite, what we need to do. We need to get there in a different way. So in that, talking about the customer interactions, whether it is in person at a trade show, right? You're working a trade show booth. That's one of those places where, we see younger generations who maybe they're a sales development rep or a business development rep, and they're actually just sending email campaigns. They're not really getting on the phone to talk, about the product. And then they get in front of a real live person who says, so what do you guys do? And they're like, they don't know what to say, but also they're just not used to being, interacting with those customers. So there's an area there. There's virtual engagement, meaning we're kind of on a virtual call. Yeah, we are really, we're taping this podcast, recording. I can't believe I said taping. Sorry, recording this podcast. It's not going to tape. Showing my age. And so there's that, because really during the pandemic, that was kind of one of our core offerings too, was that we were having so many virtual calls, and it is hard. Like the technology itself is not, it kills energy for one, that camera. You're in a room by yourself, right? Like you're not surrounded by people who you're feeding off of their energy. So this is one of those times when we talked about that boring to annoying, we talk about doing 33% extra energy, like more energy than you think you need just to come in where you thought you were. Right. So the virtual is a place where it applies, even on the phone. If we want to talk about just our voice, we talk about vocal engagement. We have a training on that. And that is, we take our voice for granted, right? We open our mouth, we put some air out, and we talk. But actors, they warm up their voices. They do exercises so they sound nicer, right? We're using great mics. That helps us, right? We sound better than we actually do in real life, right? But that's like that radio thing, right? So there is an application of technology in there, but all of that, we can make people like us more. We can create greater connection if we know what to do with our voice, with our body language, with, the words that we use. There's so much in there. And sorry, guys, I'm going off on like a passionate rant here, but yeah. So what was the question? I think it applies. I think I answered it.
Well, and I think it's interesting to me, like in the business context, it's how do you apply basic human psychology to a new environment, right? So we talk about the video conferencing call, we're in this small window. Well, there's still a lot of value in being able to see a person's hands so you can see the motions, but we're still constrained. So I think kind of what you're saying is do more than you think you have to do, that 33% more, which I love, but also just realize some of the messages that you would normally be sending person to person, face to face, aren't going to cross the divide unless you make that extra effort, unless you really do show your hands, make sure you're visible in the window and things like that.
Yeah. Well, and the way we're recording, and I know it's recording more than we see us of each other, I actually feel quite claustrophobic virtually because I feel so narrow, right? I want to expand out and I want to like use my arms bigger, right?
Right.
And so just to tag on also what you're talking about, there's something I talk about in the book that I call the hierarchy of communication. So think of a triangle, in the lower base part, and we're going to work our way up. At the bottom, it's just written communication, right? So if you think of a letter, you think of an email, there's only words to be able to describe. There's no tone. There's no nothing, right? So sometimes people can take you the wrong way because they don't get your sense of humor or what have you, right?
Yeah.
And it's time delayed, right? You're not going to actually be able to write back and correct things until you hear back from them, and however that is. You go one step up above that, you start using emojis. Now, I think emojis, like we all use emojis now. It used to be just like a teen thing, right? But emojis at least add a little bit of tone, right? So that we get a sense, oh, okay, this is what they're going after. So it gives you a little bit, just a little bit more, okay? You go above that, you get a phone call, like a vocal call, right? Vocal only. Now you can hear tone. Now you can hear people, you get a better sense of where they're coming from, right? And you can just communicate so much more that way. And it's in real time, right? So you're getting feedback quicker because feedback's important to engagement. You got to make sure they're engaged. And if not, we need to change things up, right? And then you go up from there, we're going to do a virtual call. We're seeing them and we're hearing them at the same time. So we're being able to transfer more information, and it's as good as we can get with right now, I should say, without being in person. Okay. But once we're in person, we're actually breathing the same air. You know, there's an energy thing that we just can't replace. Right. And so nothing will like, no matter how much you click from place to place, it'll never replace face to face. Right. So that's the top of that hierarchy. So we talk about whenever you can, depending on your time and everything, but you want to be efficient and effective, but the effective is going to be going right to the top, right, in person. But flying out to see someone may not be, the best use of time and money in some cases, right? So we go as high as we can for as important as it is as the objective.
I mean, that really resonates with us. I think particularly from the perspective of, we do a lot of workshops and we do training sessions, and too often people are like, let's just do it remote. And we have to remind them, like, okay, we can do something remote, but you're going to get an order of magnitude better engagement and better response and better learning from the people if we can do this in person. And I think that's an important one, at least for us. We already believe that, but it's nice to have you double down on it, and we'll use that as some fodder for us with clients to say, no, we really should do this in person.
You demand to be seen when you're in person. Like, there's no denying the fact that you're right in front of them. And so when I do infotainment at trade show booths, so I'm an entertainer conveying information in an engaging way. I put a big crowd of people around the trade show booth, right? And then I talk about why they should take a closer look. We scan badges, it's lead generation, and cross-sell them to demos and that sort of thing. And sometimes there'll be someone like in my front row on their phone, and it's just like, and I'm going a mile a minute, and I look down and I'm like, really? Like, really? Like, and then the guy will feel awful, right? But we're so used to tuning out, but I'll just mess with that guy. If he goes back on his phone again, I just, on him harder. But it just be, but part of that too, now just to kind of pull back a little bit, because I'm going off script and making, and embracing the what is, the now, what the world's giving me, it makes it more special for everyone too. Right. Like, and it's like that kind of live in person, I can't believe this happened. I'm glad I was here for this. All of that just, creates those moments that are memorable. Yeah.
So we have one final question for you, a brief question. We're 15 minutes goes by so fast. So last question is, if our listeners did one thing tomorrow to increase the engagement that they're looking for in their work or in their life, what would that be? What's your bit of wisdom?
I think we covered some of this, but I'm gonna encapsulate it with the idea of just playing bigger. So when I say play bigger, you're going to give more of yourself to your interactions, whether that's being more present, whether that is using your voice a little bit more, concentrating on that. Just bring some intention with you to just try to, how do we make this a little more, just have more essence to it, right? And so it might be the 33% more energy. It might be playing bigger in terms of their body language, using their voice, all of these places where they could just add a little bit more and get out of that boring, create a little more contrast, and find that sweet spot to be engaging.
That's great. Before we wrap up, our final thing is, if people want to reach out and connect with you, learn more about your work, all that kind of stuff, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so website is engageify.ai. So it's ENGAGIFY.ai. And they can reach out to me also on LinkedIn. That's the best platform for me. And it's Anders Boulanger. So it's ANDERSBOULANGER. That's a lot of spelling. I'm sorry. Anders Boulanger. At the LinkedIn. So you'll find me in Engageify. And by the way, if you go to engage-first.com, that's the site for the book. You can get the book there. There's also a download for 4 ways to engage. So it's kind of like, if you want to be more engaging, you can get a PDF there. And if you buy the book, there's actually a free presentation training too that you can access as well there. Okay.
Nice.
We love free offers.
Yeah.
Great. So, Anders, thank you again for a wonderful conversation. I know I've learned some things that I want to do better at applying. I think both JL and I are a little bit fearful of being annoying. So we will strive to be less annoying. For everybody else, strive to not care so much about being annoying. That's what I meant. Yeah. For everybody else, if you're listening, thanks again for listening. We'd love it if you'd go and like the post. And even more, we want to hear what you do with the things that you learn. So leave some comments for us. That's what we love. And if you know of anybody who'd benefit from hearing the episode or benefit from connecting with Anders, please feel free to share the episode with them. That's it. And we will see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.